I verbalize soca as a pop leaning genre. And the reason I say that soca is a pop leaning genre and not truly pop, soca has this ability, it's very porous, it's very flexible. There's a lot of osmosis happening when you listen to soca. It's constantly drawing in different sounds. And in that sense, it kind of makes it like pop. You think of soca being pop. You think, oh, okay, this is a Caribbean's pop music. Because unlike other sounds like a reggae, which has a completely Jamaican stamp, this is Jamaica. You have to sing it this way. You have to play it this way. There's a certain groove. There's a certain type of rhythm. There's a certain type of progression in the music that in order for it to be considered reggae. Same thing for dancehall, which is a little more flexible, but still there are certain rules that you go by. Reggaeton, you have to play that beat, that doom, da doom, 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 da doom, doom, doom. You have to play it a certain way in order for it to be considered reggaeton. However, soca is a lot more flexible. You could have 5 different artists doing soca and they all sound completely different and you don't know you're listening. If you don't know what soca is at all, you're confused. You might be like, okay, what is this? So that in a sense gives it that porosity and that flexibility. It's like water. It makes it a lot like pop music. However, I see pop music as just being a complete gas, where pop music could change color, shape, form in any way. Whereas soca, that liquidity, that is not truly solid. It's that liquid form, that watery form. I still feel grounds it just enough to keep it from being completely pop. And I consider it to be pop leaning, meaning that there are elements of it that are similar to pop because it's still connected to a cultural space. There's still certain things that you have to do in order for things to be considered soca. It still exists within a Caribbean space now. And now at this time that she put out the album, it was still considered straight up. You ask anybody where soca is from, the average person would have said, what is 2008? Would have probably said Trinidad. But now you move forward about 15 years and now it's more considered Caribbean because we have so many different offshoots, different branches, different subgenres of soca. But there's still a root. There's still a cultural root to what soca is. And understanding where soca came from, coming out of calypso music here in Trinidad and Tobago, and understanding the role of the rhythm section, understanding a pan song, like we spoke about a pan song, Colors Again, on her previous album, Independent Lady, you hear those elements that make you say, oh yes, that is soca. Because unlike pop, which you cannot identify at all by one thing, soca still has certain identifiers. So the cultural mores and boundaries may not be as firm as certain other genres in the Caribbean, like konpa, like reggae, like dancehall, like reggaeton. It may not be as firm. However, they are still there because there's a certain way, like just like I identify with the reggaeton, where you had the doom, da doom, 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 da doom. Soca has a very similar movement in some soca songs, but instead of going doom, da doom, doom, it goes doom, da doom, doom, da doom, doom, da doom, doom. It's a lighter way of hitting. They don't hit the drum with the stick the same way. But there's a way to approach soca. There's a certain likeness. There's a certain way the percussion is built. Although now we have so much electronic elements, so many different things added in. But at the end of the day, I still think soca is pop leaning. And because it's pop leaning, we have artists in the genre are able to do what Destra did on this record.
I think you're making sense, and I agree with much of what you're saying. I consider soca to be like if there was a pop music of the Caribbean, not pop the genre, a popular music of the Caribbean, right? So
Okay.
not in relation to the pop that comes out of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
but what is the genre that amongst the Caribbean, is present in many countries, and you have subgenres like all those things you said. I think soca is that genre, or at least the English speaking side of the Caribbean. But soca is also present in like Dominica
Mm-hmm.
and St. Lucia. For the Creole or French speaking Caribbean, I would say those genres would be konpa or zouk. Zouk again coming from konpa as well. Zouk is an interesting genre.
Ah, zouk.
Um, yeah, zouk.